All right, we're going to go ahead and start. I want to welcome you to our 2023 Self-Direction Virtual Conference Series. My name is Erica Andrews. I'm a senior consultant at Applied Self-Direction. I want to thank you for joining us today for the session, Stories of Self-Direction. I'm going to run through a few quick housekeeping issues before we begin. Your audio and video have been automatically turned off. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to submit those via the Q&A box. We will address as many of your questions as possible at the end of the session. Today's session is being recorded and will be available on our website following today's session. And closed captioning for the entire conference series is available courtesy of our premier sponsor, Avero. Now, on to the session. I think we can all agree that people with lived experience are in the best position to talk about how the freedom and independence self-direction has brought to their lives. I know I love to talk about the difference it has made in my life, but who am I kidding? I just really love to talk. So lucky for all of you today, we have gathered a few other people to tell you about their stories. Our panelists for today include Kathy Herzog, Tim Jin, Nate Turner, and Babette and Mel Smith. I will go ahead and ask the first question of the panelists. And during the first question, the panelists will introduce themselves. So our first question for everybody today is tell us about your experiences in self-direction. Tim, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
Hi, my name is Tim and I'm speaking to you today in my home office in California. I'm in a wheelchair and can type with my toes and communicate with you all on my communication device. My home office is also my break room, lunch room, and meeting room, and when I'm not working, it transfers back to my living room. The tire marks from my wheelchairs are permanently sunk on my hardwood floors because I'm always at my desk, working, but when I'm not, the remote for the TV has a lot of toe prints. Meaning, one of my favorite pleasures is to eat and fall asleep just enough to press the rewind button at where I thought I left off, and ultimately, rewatching the show again. Self-direction has surely changed my life. I have given many presentations on my journey of self-direction, and I'm not too fond of repeating the same thing over and over because it gets boring to me, no matter how much I'm being asked to speak. Besides having the authority to live my life to the fullest and hiring and firing my staff, I want to bring up another topic that I haven't thought about what the program has done for me. Before I got into self-direction, I moved out from my family and graduated college and landed a part-time job where I needed to go into the office 5 days a week. This was a huge achievement for my service coordinators, but I knew that I wanted more. After almost 16 years at the same job, I was too comfortable where I was, and there was a lot of physical toll on my body because I didn't have the proper care needed from the agency for my personal needs. Since I started self-direction, going on for 2 years, my mindset shifted to be more confident than ever because I finally have the power to say where I want to go, who I want to help me, how I want to be helped, and plan my schedule on how I want it to be. At this conference, you already heard of many things on EVV, budget authorities, services, and so forth, but you have yet to hear from the client's perspective. Being confident. Since I started self-direction, my team has helped me discover my true potential. I'm now one of the co-directors for the empowerment team at Disability Voices United, and I also have many other projects going on, such as speaking on this panel. If I didn't start SD, I would probably still be going into my part-time job, calling the agency to see if they have anyone coming in to help me with lunch and the restroom. Now, since I started the program, I know that my staff is in the next room, and I can ask for help. Self-direction is a confidence builder. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Kathy, do you have anything you want to tell us about your experience in self-direction?
Yes, I'm sorry, I had some difficulty unmuting my mic. I've been involved with self-direction since the 1980s. In 1989, I moved out of my parents' house after graduating from college. I lived with roommates. I managed to get a job. I have attended lots of independent living conferences like this one. It's helped me to become a board member. And I also participated on a local talk radio show about people with disabilities with the help of my attendants. I started out working at a Center for Independent Living, and I got really involved in the independent living movement. And so I have actually been on many boards and committees and advisory bodies regarding independent living and self-direction and consumer control, and have helped to write some of Pennsylvania's documentation. I don't want to different kinds of things that have helped to forward independent living and consumer control, person with disability control of our lives. And it's been pretty great. I've learned lots of information and gathered lots of exciting new creative things that can be done with independent living and consumer direction. And I like to share them with other people.
Great, thanks so much, Kathy. Nate, do you want to go ahead and share?
Thank you so much, Erica. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this discussion. I'm glad to be here. My story with self-direction could not, it's just really important to understand how great providers and self-directing really can allow folks to live the life that they want. And let me back up a little bit. My name's Nathan Turner. I've been an advocate for people with disabilities for the past 15 years, and I share my experience as a Black man living with cerebral palsy with a wide variety of organizations, including my employer, the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. I'm a program administrator where I support the people supported in Ohio's DD system with elevating their voices in a wide variety of areas, and that includes navigating self-direction as a waiver support. And in my personal experience, I really have found that self-directing providers, even though I don't self-direct as a rule with HBC waiver services, has been a game changer for me. It's allowed me to develop deeper connections with my providers and allowed them to support me in a professional capacity to be able to work full time and help other people make their voices heard. And it also really just gives me the choice and control to have my services and supports the way that I want to need them and not have them be defined by some agency representative, who thinks they know my needs better than I do. So it just gives me so many options and flexibility to be able to do what I want to do because I require total support to live interdependently in the community.
Great, thanks, Nate. Those are some great
Thank you.
points. And then last but not least, we have Mel and Babette. You guys want to share a little bit?
Sure. Thanks, Andrea. We look at Mel's entrance into self-direction and life throughout the years as her going from a behavior plan to a business plan. So we're going to talk a little bit deeper into how it can actually impact a person's life. Mel started in self-directed services in 2013. She was one of about 3 people in our county who were actually in self-directed services. Before that, she had been in a day program and also lived residentially for a year and a half. She expressed her displeasure and her unhappiness by acting out aggressively. She would unbuckle the seatbelts off of other clients. She would hit and kick and pinch. And although we tried to explain to them that yes, you are very nice now. That it was her way of being able to say, I'm not happy. And we tried to get them to do activities with her that she enjoyed. It's a little limited when you're in a day program and there are other individuals who also, want to pursue activities. So when we first heard about self-direction, we were extremely interested in it. And we, as we learned more about it, we were able to bring her home from living residentially. And I can say that the agency was probably very happy that Mel no longer was living in one of their residential homes, because she did give them some interesting events. But upon bringing her home, we had no behavior plan, because we knew that we could allow her to live her life the way she wanted to live it. We knew what she liked. We knew how she wanted to spend her day. And we knew that self-direction would allow us to provide her the life that she wanted to live. So some of the things that really made a difference in Mel's life were being able to sleep in. She requires a lot of sleep. And to some people, you would just think, well, just, set your alarm earlier, go to bed earlier. It didn't work for Mel. She consistently likes to sleep until 10 a.m. So we're able to not schedule any activities any earlier than 10 a.m. Mel likes to be so in control of her life that she prefers to pick what sheets are on her bed, what pictures are hanging on her wall. And that's, those are the minor things that you and I just take for granted. We go to the store and we buy a set of sheets that we like and we put them on our bed and we hang the pictures where we want. With Mel, a lot of those things came out in behaviors, taking the pictures down, taking the sheets off. And when she got the independence to make big decisions, it also gave her independence to make little decisions and vice versa. So now Mel can pick out if she wants flannel sheets, if she wants sheets with Mickey Mouse on them. I think those are your favorites. And she also gets to pick out where she wants her pictures. So not only does she get to self-direct in small ways, she also gets to say where she goes for the day. She's very active in our community. She gets to go to a swimming class. She gets a massage in Mommy's van. I am one of her DSPs, and she has always been happy to be with me. And so now she gets to have me as one of her direct support professionals, which has been one of the biggest, one of the great things in your life, I think. You you really like being able to go places with Mom. Not only does she gets a massage, she gets to get her hair and nails done. She gets to go shopping for her sparkly shoes. Everybody that knows Mel knows that she likes sparkly shoes. Also, when Mel was living residentially or attending the day program, it was deemed that she would never be employable due to the behaviors. And Mel is now a co-trainer for Expectations Matter, My Life, My Choice, My Plan. She's been helping train for about 2 years. And we talk about how we develop her plan using pictures and the Integrated STAR, which is one of the Charting the Life course tools. And so for someone who was aggressive, who caused a lot of discord, now to come to someone who is in her own office at the moment, like Tim. She has her large computer monitor because she's visually impaired. She has her adapted mouse, and she actually makes money. So she has a great story, and it really shows that just how vital making your own decisions can be for how happy you are in your life. So Yes, and she likes to take road trips, she's telling me. She would stay in a motel every day. We look at her as if she wouldn't have had disabilities, she would have wanted to be a rock star. So just because she has disabilities doesn't mean that she shouldn't be. So given a microphone, we can get concerts all over the place. And we say that she has her own fan club. She would be happy staying in a different motel every night and performing on stage. So we try to further her enjoyment of those things. And we do take her on as many road trips as we can, although it's not as many as she would like. Train rides are a big thing. She really likes to take train rides. And she really likes to spend time with her nephew, who is 4. And those are things that would not have really been provided if she were in a typical, day program. And now most of her time is spent doing those things, getting to spend time with her nephew and taking him on all of her excursions too, because he would be one of her groupies for your rock band, huh? Is there anything else you'd like to tell him about being in self-direction? Who's the boss? Who's the boss? Melanie is, that's right. So we are very big proponents on how life-changing self-direction can be.
Great, thank you guys so much also. Thank you all for telling us a little bit about your experiences in self-direction. And Mel and I think if you and I lived a lot closer together with our love for French fries and all things shiny, we would be really good friends.
I think so.
Now on to question 2. Question 2 is things I wish I knew before I started self-directing. Nate, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think one of the big things I wish I had known before I had started to self-direct, and I don't want to say that it's a lot of work, but there's a lot of responsibility that comes with, as I like to say, grabbing the bull by the horns and taking charge of your life and by consequence, your plan, and really developing that plan so that you clearly spell out what you need in terms of supports. It's a lot of effort to think about that yourself. I really had to learn to know myself better and communicate assertively and learn some problem solving tools. I got a lot out of charting the life course. I'm actually a certified charting the life course ambassador for my job. So I really appreciated Mel's aspect to her story there. And then also, well, not so much for me, but for everyone, learning how to assert their rights and understand their responsibilities, I think are critical components to self-directing and embracing the responsibility that comes with it, but then also know that there is support in terms of support brokers or targeted case managers or financial management entities, and in some cases, peer support through centers for independent living in other areas as well. So if anybody's afraid, I know it can be scary, but if you have any interest in self-directing at all, please let your caseworkers know and just give it a try. There is support out there and you will be successful.
Thanks, Nate. Those are some really great points, but it is challenging and it can be hard, but there's so much support out there for you. Kathy, did you have anything you wanted to add on this question?
Yes, one of the things that I had to learn was how to advertise for attendance, like what kind of words and phrases work best, where to advertise. When I first started out in self-direction, I lived in a college town, so it was pretty easy to advertise. I just would make up little tear off tab boards and stick them in all the laundromats. That worked pretty well. And because I went to the college where I lived, I knew some of the attendants that worked and lived in the community. Another really great place was going to the local college nursing department, education department, and art department. Those students also need lots of money, and they're usually quite committed, and they were some of my very best attendants. One of the things that Nate touched on was the responsibilities. Like, I didn't know how to file taxes. And way back in the day, we did not have financial management services. We had to file our own taxes and things like that. And then some of the other things that I wish I knew too was, like Nate said, the problem solving and conflict solving. So when you have 8 or so different people coming into your house, that also means that you have 8 different places that your food's going to be stored, and where it's going to be in the refrigerator or how it's going to be prepared. And everybody that works for me has their own specialty, what I say is specialty. So maybe not everybody does the laundry because not everybody does it well. And, you know, you end up with different colored clothes. Maybe not everybody's a good cook. So it's a kind of a balancing act between who's going to do what. And then you have the attendants like, well, she doesn't ever have to do this. And I'm like, that's because her specialty is this and yours is that. So that's not ever going to happen. So stop complaining. You know, I try to make the attendants, I try to line up what I want the attendants to do with what they do best. And that doesn't mean that everybody does the same things. And so we've had to switch tasks from time to time, and that's okay. But it does get to be a balancing act when you've got one person saying, well, I always get stuck with this duty. Why can't this one do that? So that's one of the interesting and fun balancing acts that people get to do with the self-direction that you don't always get with an agency model. So I'm going to stop there and let somebody else take over. All right, Tim's.
When I
looks like-
started self-direction, it was a mindset change for me also. I'm really good at the back office work, like background check and approving timesheets. But for me, I had a hard time being in charge of what I wanted to do because I was so used to the agency system and asking someone else, like playing Mother May I.
That's a great point, Tim. Sometimes we get stuck in forgetting that we're in charge. So thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for the things you said, Kathy. That's true. We do have to definitely play to people's strengths, but I am super glad that I joined self-direction once FMS were involved, because I barely can do my own taxes. Babette and Mel, do you have anything you would like to add?
Well, we want to go way back and say that what we wish we knew before self-direction was that self-direction existed. So I know that, you know, now there's a push for it to be more recognized and for more people to know about it. But back then for us, it was a life changer just to find out that we had this option. And unlike Tim, Mel's never had a problem telling people what she wants to do. She was bossy before she became the boss, huh? That's what we always say. Go. And she's ready to go.
Thanks, Babette and Mel. Oh, Nate, do you have something you'd like to add?
I just want to delve a little bit deeper into Babette and Mel's point about knowing self-direction existed. I do think there is a huge information gap within various parts of the disability community, especially for people who might have more cognitive disabilities and being able to access self-direction. And so I think one of the reasons work like this is so important is because it spreads that awareness, but we need to continue to develop information and resources to a wide array of audiences and make sure those resources are accessible to those audiences. And I think helping that along might also be recruiting people living with disabilities to be support brokers wherever possible.
Those are some excellent and amazing points, Nate. Thanks so much. Our next question. We all know that there is a workforce crisis out there. It's very hard to find workers in self-direction right now. So can you guys talk a little bit about how the workforce crisis has impacted, self-direction for you? Oh, and how about if we start with Babette and Mel this time, because I seem to always have you guys go last.
We've been very fortunate during the workforce crisis in that two of Mel's employees are family members, myself and her younger sister. She is her main DSP. And then her other part-time DSPs were both family friends. So we have not really had to ever advertise or try to find people to work for Mel, because we kind of had them picked out and knew ahead of time who they were going to be.
That's awesome. Glad to hear that. Kathy, do you have anything you'd like to share?
One of the things that I did during the pandemic, actually, I have to back up a little bit. I did consumer control and consumer self-directed for a number of years. Then I kind of got tired of doing it. So then I switched to an agency consumer delegated model. But then when the pandemic hit, we needed to have limited number of people coming in and out of the house. So I went back to the consumer directed model and I split my time in half. So I had some of my time from the agency and some from the consumer directed. And what I ended up doing was I ended up hiring the people that were referred to me from the agency and added them for additional hours in the evening time. So for me, I found it was one of the things that I could do was to hire people that I met through the agency and have them do both. So that's one of the things that I've done. I also have this really cool system where at least when I was in college, I would say to my attendants that the attendant needed to find 2 people to replace themselves as they were graduating or moving on. And so I had the attendant help me to find new attendants because they already knew my care, they knew what was involved, and they knew people that would probably match up good with me. So I have always found that that is really helpful to me to have them help me do the search as well. It has been definitely difficult to find people to do this kind of job, primarily because the pay rate is so low. That's one of the biggest problems that we're having right now in my area, because Walmart pays $15 or $16 an hour, and even more at nighttime for the overnight shifts. So we're competing with McDonald's, Walmart's, gas stations, convenience stores, and that's a really big problem, the pay. So.
Yeah, I think that's a problem in most all self-direction programs.
I agree.
Tim, you have something you want to add?
I haven't had a workforce issue because a lot of my former staff that has been with me for many years just decided to follow me to self-direction because they knew everything about myself and my life, and we have much more flexibility at doing whatever we want without agency approval.
Awesome. That's really great to hear, Tim. Excuse me. And then Nate. I wasn't gonna forget about you, don't worry.
No,
It's coming.
that's okay. I know you would never forget about me.
Of course.
So I think in answering your question, one of the things I should clarify is that Ohio actually allows independent providers to become certified providers and directly bill Medicaid if they so choose. And now we also have a self-directed option, but it post-dated my establishment into the waiver. So my providers were already in place under traditional care models prior to self-direction coming to the waiver that I used, but I had worked with them for a very long time. Several of them came from former agency providers that I'd used, and they decided to become a certified independent provider so that they could keep working with me across systems. And I think that is one of the reasons why I got through COVID relatively unscathed, because I had 4 people that were willing to spend various aspects of all week with me so that I did not have to have other people supporting me during a dangerous time. And it was still problematic because they all dealt with elements of COVID during the emergency, and so we had to just constantly be in flex, and everybody just rose to the occasion, and they made my life happen, being the subtle heroes that they are. Not all heroes wear capes, and a lot of DSPs are definitely heroes in our lives.
I can definitely attest to that. During the pandemic, we shut it down and my boyfriend did all of my care for 24/7 for 13 months. He for sure deserves a cape and he is definitely a hero. And he still likes me to this day. So, I mean, I guess I'm doing good, right? And then the next question, what do you wish state personnel and FMS providers knew about self-direction? Tim, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Before choosing a FMS, I interviewed all of them that were available at the time. Most of them had the same model and the same hiring process. I went with one particular FMS because they were most flexible to my needs and how I wanted to manage my staff members. Instead of seeing me as another SDP client, they saw me as an asset to their team by asking me how they can improve their services and accessibility to clients and families. Their SDP team does not see self-direction as a line item in their spreadsheet. They see self-direction as a part of their lives too, along with the clients that they serve. I was in the traditional system for almost 20 years and thought that I was achieving my dreams by always making compromises with agencies and vendors for their bottom line. I was definitely wrong. Since I started self-direction, those 2 decades have quickly faded because I'm only making compromises with myself and my team members are there to support me and my life has become that more achievable.
Great, thanks so much for that, Tim. I'm glad that your FMS is like that. That's amazing. Kathy, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, one of the things that we've experienced in Pennsylvania is that we don't have any control over the FMS. Our FMS has now been made an administrative entity of managed care organizations. So we have very little input into that. But on that note, I want to let FMS and state representatives know that internet based with EVV, which is electronic visit verification, internet service isn't available everywhere. Free cell phones are not available everywhere, and they don't always work with the apps. So what I think should be done is that apps and dashboards and things like that that they prepare for those of us to log into, those should be very simple. They should be broken down by pay periods, which I can now say going from one FMS provider to the other, the second one that we now have does not break it down into pay periods, and it can get rather confusing during the approval process. And another thing I'd like to suggest is that they set up the consumer advisory groups before they take over. One of the things that's happened is they had like these great big statewide update things, but consumers really weren't given a lot of input into the development of the apps that we were going to be required to use. So getting consumers to have some input into the apps and the programs and the dashboards and things would be really helpful. And I also would strongly suggest that if there are any FMS people out there, that you please, 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 and I hate to say this, but please don't use Google Authenticator for your two-step verification process, because it only allows 30 seconds to copy a code number from a little window into another little window to verify. And each time we have to log in to, say, for example, see pay stubs, that's very, very difficult. And one other thing is that we also discovered that the attendants, because they earn such little money, there is no federal tax being withheld from their paychecks, which we did not learn until tax time this year. So all of my attendants had to owe money at the end of the year. And the FMS providers say, we're not tax brokers. We can't help you with that. We, call your tax person. So then, now we have to go around and do a double back and try to change everybody's W-2 forms to actually add money as withholdings so that the attendants don't owe money at the end of the year, because it's a lot harder for a low earning person to come up with that tax money to pay at the end of the year than it is for them to just have it withheld throughout the year and then get, anything extra back if there was any extra taken out. So that's some stuff that we would have really liked to have known ahead of time. That would have been very helpful.
Those are all great things to share. Thank you, Kathy. Nate, do you have anything you'd like to say?
I think in conjunction with what Kathy was saying, I think if they do use authenticator apps, making sure that maybe it's a push format where big buttons come up as opposed to having to enter the code might just be a best practice for that implementation moving forward. And I'll definitely take that feedback, back to the Ohio team and see, if we can implement something like that. But I think my advice for state professionals and FMSs is to never underestimate the ability of anyone to self-direct and to make the information about self-directing as accessible as possible to a wide variety of people with different disabilities. Because I often hear people say, well, I don't want to deal with self-direction because it's too complicated. And I know I began my remarks by saying there's plenty of support out there, but a lot of the support from the FMSs and the case managers, it's just not delivered in a way that's easy for folks to understand. And that, ultimately discourages a lot of people. So I think FMSs and state personnel have to recognize that they are to a large degree a gatekeeper to people self-directing, and recognize that power and privilege and really work to make self-direction readily achievable for everybody.
Eric, I think you're on
I
mute.
am, yep, I'm over here, Babette and Mel, why aren't you talking? And I'm like, oh, right, because they didn't hear me say their name. Got it. Sorry about that.
Well, I think Tim and Kathy and Nate really covered everything so well. And the only thing I would like to add is that I think they need to remember that the self in self-direction means individual, and we're all not the same, because sometimes thinking outside of the box isn't what they want to see, but yet we need it to be individualized. And another thing in my experience is when there are so many changes that happen, and sometimes they're changed so quickly that a lot of errors occur, and a lot could be wouldn't have to happen if changes were rolled out slower and in a process that gave people the time to adjust to them and to make the changes that they need to individually make before the changes are actually set and started. So
Those are also great points. Thanks for that, Mel. And then kind of flip of, what is one challenge you've actually faced with self-direction? Jim, do you want to start us off again?
I have excellent staff helping me, and because they know that I'm their boss and not working for an agency, they are aware of my budget. What I mean is, they don't know the total amount, but they are aware that it's not unlimited. What I've noticed from my team is, they are more aware of what I want to do, rather than their needs. For example, a few weeks ago, I had 2 staff that were out at the same time. I was out on a planned vacation, and the staff that was supposed to cover the other staff's shift wasn't feeling good and told me a few days before their shift. The previous plan was to have Stephen cover Mayra's weekend shift since she was on vacation, but since Stephen was out sick, we needed to come up with a different plan. Eric and I planned a month in advance. Since Stephen let us know that he wasn't feeling well 3 days before Mayra's shift on the weekend, Eric and I had enough time to figure things out. We contacted all of my 3 backups and they couldn't come in. It was just Eric and Adrian. Instead of sucking me dry on overtime, we figured out a way to cover the 24-hour shift with a minimum amount of overtime. My staff members are there for me. They have told me that they know other staff members that work for other self-direction clients, and they keep telling on how much overtime they are making, etc. They tell their friends that it is not self-direction, and their goal is to never shrink my budget to 0. This is why I have the best team, and I treat all of them as if they were my family. I probably spend a lot on meals and tickets, or whatever a month on my team, because they understand that my SDP budget is there for my needs. My friends and family have met most of my staff in different settings, and they treat them better than how they treat me. I'm never jealous of that.
But that, Mel, do you want to talk about a challenge you've encountered and how you've overcome it at all?
I think one of the challenges that we've not seen so much ourselves, but we've noticed with other people, are the turnover of staff, even in like the CCS agencies. So when someone finally gets to know you and knows all about you, and then they're gone. So that's a tough thing for most people. Melanie's first CCS was with her for over 20 years. And the new CCS was with her for 6 months, and now we're without ACCS. So we are now experiencing what others have been experiencing all along.
Mami,
Mhm.
no pak.
Nate, do you have anything you'd like to share?
I think I agree that, managing turnover in support staff is very, very important. In some ways, I think I'm always recruiting, even if it's talking to people who might want to eventually become a provider someday, because, even in self-direction to become a certified provider can take a few months. And if I need that person to be ready to support me, I want to start the process well in advance. So I guess my challenge is that I'm always trying to find the right person, because even though I think someone might be a great provider, it doesn't always mean they'll be the best support for me. And I really want the relationship to work on both sides. I don't want to have somebody supporting me if they're uncomfortable supporting me, or it doesn't fit with their lifestyle or scheduling or what have you. So I'm constantly having to think about recruiting folks and really having a plan B in case, my scheduled staff person doesn't work. I'm very fortunate in that I still live with family and they're able to help me bridge the gaps as family, but they're getting older, so it's tougher to rely on them. And so I'm finding myself really working to identify my needs, and it's just a continuous process to support recruiting and finding a provider, but you want to be persistent and never give up.
So true. We're always recruiting, right? And Kathy, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Um, the challenge is definitely emergency backup. That's one of the biggest challenges. And I actually have always had myself in a situation where I have lived with roommates that can actually do my care. When I first graduated, I lived in a wheelchair accessible apartment with a person with low vision, was not totally blind, but was physically able-bodied. So that person was able to physically put me into bed and physically able to take me to the bathroom between shifts. And early on, I only had 6 hours of attendant care. And now I'm very fortunate enough to have like 91 hours a week instead of just the 6 hours a day. I now get 13 hours a day. And then I'm also very, very fortunate that I live in an area that offers what we call clustered care, which is shared care overnight. So the attendant is kind of an on-call person and floats between 3 or 4 different houses throughout the night as needed or on a schedule. So that's been very, very, very helpful to me. And the other big challenge that we have here is getting people through the hiring process quickly, because the process went from signing a contract and you're hired, welcome aboard, now you're starting right now, to they might be 3, 4, or 5 weeks out. And we need to get certain kind of number identification numbers so that they can be registered in some database somewhere. And that ties in with our Department of Human Services. And that's really actually been one of the biggest challenges, is getting that stupid little unique identification number. Because if somebody's already enrolled and then they try and enroll again to hire through me, we can't get that number easily. We have to call somebody. And for somebody that works on the weekend and they're only available on the weekend, that number's not available. So that's kind of a big pain in the butt. So we have to make a scheduled time for the people to come back to my house so that we can call 800 numbers and try and get their unique numbers. The process of the hiring process has definitely lengthened with all of the background security checks, training that's now required. even for consumer directed model in Pennsylvania, they're now requiring a minimum number of hours of training. Where I used to be the one that trained them, and now I have nothing to do with that training process, but it's still required before they start. So that's a big problem, and I wish we could kind of eliminate it or waiver it or something.
Great.
uh,
Tim, did you have something you wanted to add? I saw you went off mute.
I have a question for all of you. How many of us let staff go because they are not the right fit? Erica, can you go first? Because we would rather hear from you and give you the hot seat.
Yeah, that's not fair. I'm the facilitator here, not a panelist. I love when you crack yourself up because you just start laughing. It's so funny you asked that because I literally I just had someone I let go because we just weren't a good fit, and I didn't feel super comfortable with her in my home. So I actually did just let her go, but they did the old well, as you all know, I broke my legs a couple months ago, and so I did the old I'm not comfortable having new people list right now, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I never want to burn bridges with caregivers, because you just never know when you're going to be absolutely stuck and need that person, that even though they're not your best one, they're a person, they're a human body. So I just told her that my boyfriend was going to do the shifts for now, and I'd let her know if I needed people again. But does anyone else want to share about that? I don't want to call on anyone because it wasn't, but Kathy, you unmuted, so we'll go for you.
That's a really sticky situation. And yes, I just had to let somebody go that was with me for 7 or 8 years because something changed in that person. I don't know what exactly happened, but they started getting really sick. They weren't doing things to improve their health. And so I just basically, what I kind of do is I call it the phasing out. I readjust their schedule and I phase them down a little bit more. I tell them, hey, you need to do something to take care of yourself, because this isn't really working anymore. And I try and give them an opportunity. And if that doesn't work, then I just kind of phase them down to the point where they're not making enough to make it worthwhile. And while that's happening, I'm working on getting back up, coming in and getting ready to take over that shift. So I kind of groom the one person in advance while I'm kind of very slowly phasing somebody out. I had one person I had to phase out because although she had been with me since my college days, she had a disability that kept progressing. And I said, it pains me to see you having to cut my food. I'm afraid that I don't even want to watch you cut my food anymore because I know it hurts you so much. And I hate to say this, but you now need an attendant. So, I'll help you get your disability benefits. And you need to just lay back and take it easy now. You've earned your life. You've been a great person. And now you need the help. And I'm sorry that you do, but I'll help you get it. So that person actually went from being an attendant to requiring an attendant. It happens sadly, but it does.
Caregiving is a tough job. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Tim just likes to put people on the hot seat, I guess, but not answer. Well, we only have about 4 minutes left. I don't know if anyone in the audience has any questions that they would like to ask. In the meantime, there's kind of a unique situation here where Babette is also a support broker, not for Mel, but for other people. And so, but that, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about why you decided to become a support broker for others in self-direction programs.
Sure. When we first learned about self-direction for Melanie, we took whatever class we could to learn more about the program so that we kind of had all of the angles of it. And at the time, there were only, I think, 3 people in the county that were actually in self-direction. And as it progressed and more people saw how wonderful Melanie had done and the changes in her life, and they learned about it because we are a small community, I had people say, hey, would you be a support broker for me? Because you've been doing this for so long. And throughout that, I have grown into my own business and I support 17 people who are in self-direction. And I'm very happy to do it. It's something that grew out of seeing how well it did for Melanie, and just something that now I know how great it can be. And I try to help everyone else who's interested in it know how good it can be for their life. So it's kind of just by going through it with Mel, now it's kind of like my life's purpose to help others see the benefit of being in self-direction.
That's so true. People who live it firsthand are the best, right? Best people to help others. Kathy, did you have something you wanted to add with that?
Yes, I want to also add that we need to also be aware that we have to have the dignity of choice, and the versus, dignity of choice versus safety. There's so much emphasis placed on health and safety and stuff like that. And we also would like to get into the mix of the presumptive eligibility, that people are eligible for services and not have to wait so long for the process to get enrolled in self-direction. It should be a lot quicker, and we should have the dignity of risk and not as much focus on our safety and health and stuff. I mean, we know what we're doing.
I was just gonna say, because we as participants can handle our own.
Yep.
All right, well, it is, well, it's 3 o'clock Eastern, I think. So it is just about time to be done here. I want to thank our panelists so much for joining us today and for giving great information. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.